Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? Well, we've got the information for you right here. And Dave's going to tell you about it.
Absolutely, guys. We use this awesome application called Anchor FM. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First off, it's free.
And who doesn't like free?
Yeah, free's huge. That's what got us involved with it. Second of all, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. So you don't need all those fancy gadgets. You can have them if you want them, but not absolutely necessary.
Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and many other platforms.
Which is great. More people can hear us.
Who doesn't want more people to hear us?
I mean, I like to be heard.
I like to talk.
Another great thing is you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Like 0 people could listen to you and you could still possibly make some money.
That's amazing.
How does that even happen? It's everything you need right here to make a podcast in one place.
It's a one-stop shop and it's all you need. Anchor FM.
Yeah, so you guys, if you want to start this podcast, go to anchorfm.com to get started. What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Apogee Podcast. My name is David Carter.
And I'm Kevin Harrington.
Beautiful weather we have out there, Kevin.
It's quite beautiful. Quite beautiful.
Have you been taking advantage?
I have.
What you been doing?
Working in the yard, man. Working in the yard.
Dude, I'm about to do that this
You
weekend.
should do it. I cleaned the car today, too.
You did.
So.
Did you clean that air filter? That
No.
K&N?
No, I didn't clean the
Come on,
K&N
bro,
air
you gotta
filter.
take care of that K&N.
I cleaned it last time.
Mm.
I do worry about it because it's like the cold air induction on it. You go clean it, and it's like, don't get any vapor or water vapor in your car. And I'm like, then I never clean it.
Yeah. They're fancy.
They are fancy.
I like them, though. They're loud.
They're cool.
Yeah, I'm laying some mulch this weekend. Nothing too exciting, but it's going to be very satisfying when it's done.
Have you ever seen those mulch machines that blow the mulch in?
I have not.
I literally was laying mulch one time, and my neighbor across the street was having mulch put in, and the truck pulls up, and it's like this huge honey truck. It just looks like a huge truck, and it's like a vacuum. The guy goes over there with like a blower thing, and he's just blowing the mulch out, and I'm like, that's the devil. You're doing this in front of me while I'm over here busting my back, and you're just spraying out the mulch.
I've got a crazy yard story, and we can edit this out if we don't want to include it, but it's hilarious to me. I tell people this all the time. When we first bought our first house, we bought this house. It was on like 0.9 acres, so it was just like big enough where mowing the lawn was a pain.
Mm-hmm.
But it was my first house that I bought, so I didn't have a lawnmower. So I was like, all right, am I going to get a riding lawnmower or am I going to get a pushing lawnmower? And I was like, well, I'm in my late 20s. I'll just go out there, get a tan, get a workout. I'm going to get this push ride mower. It was the worst decision of my life. There was this one time, I think it was like 4th of July weekend, and we had people coming in from out of town, and I wanted to like get home and mow the lawn. So I get off work. I purposely take Friday afternoon off just so I can go mow this lawn because I know it's going to take forever. By 3 o'clock, I'm still on the front yard because the grass was pretty long and it was still a little wet. And every 5 feet, I had to like unclog the lawnmower. And at 3 o'clock, my neighbor, the little kid across the street, who's like 12 years old, he hops on his dad's riding lawnmower, just like looking at me while I'm just like throwing this pushing lawnmower. I was so mad. And the next day, I bought a riding lawnmower.
Good.
There's my little soap opera.
All right. So today, we are graced by the genius and masterful Rick Jones.
Rick Jones.
What is up, my people? How are you all?
Good, man. Thanks for coming over.
Oh, man, thanks for having me.
You got any lawn stories or anything?
Lawn stories? Not yet.
Oh,
but
okay.
I imagine they'll be coming soon. So I'm living the apartment life right now. So
that's almost the best life, though, because it's very low maintenance.
It is. And, I'm thankful for it. Truly thankful for it. So I feel for you in the hot sun cutting grass. But
I enjoy it now because it's my time away from my kids. So it's like my alone time.
Yeah. Hey, man.
To me, it literally is therapy.
Get it how you
really
can
is.
get it. Get that alone time.
It
man.
is hilarious because when you're a kid, it's just such a chore to go out there and mow the lawn. Your dad's like, get out there and do it. Now, like, and as an adult, when you own it, right? So it's like, that's my lawn.
Yeah.
And you totally turn into your dad.
Very quickly.
Yeah, man.
I enjoy it. I've been doing it since I was a kid, so it's one of those things.
So media guy, been doing some podcasts lately.
Have I? No, actually, this is my very first podcast.
Really?
So
Are you
I'm
serious?
super stoked about it.
Wow,
Listen, I'm honored.
Dude, we're honored. That's awesome.
that's awesome, man.
Well, let's start from the beginning, man. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, your upbringing, kind of your background story.
Yeah, man. So absolutely. So I'm from the area. Grew up in Spartanburg. Went to Burns High School.
Hey, District 5.
Yeah, D5.
That's where my kids are going.
Man, hey, you're training them right.
Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. So from Welford, which is Spartanburg County, so super small town. When I graduated from Burns, I went to Wofford. So go T-Dogs. Graduated with a degree in econ, and then continued working at this company called SCW Eurodrive. So I had started there in high school, and they for some reason liked me enough to keep me around. So I'm still hanging out there. So yeah, that's in a nutshell, kind of where I grew up at. So the Spartanburg area is very near and dear to my heart for sure.
So what were you doing there in high school? And talk about that transition from working whatever you were doing at that job in high school and transitioning to what you were doing after college.
Yeah, man. So honestly, it was just a part-time job for the for my 17-year-old self at the time. I was just looking for something to pay my car insurance and my phone bill, and so it fit the need. And I was just like working in the shop, man, which was fine. I was a busboy before then, so hey, this is like luxury.
The step
right?
up, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't smell like
That's awesome.
fish and tilapia and all kind of terrible stuff. Yeah, man, it's awful. You can't get that smell out of your clothes, man. It doesn't matter how often you wash it. And so I was just super thankful to not be bussing tables. And so I worked there starting like junior year at Burns. And when I went to Wofford, they were like, well, hey, you can continue working. And I was like, dude, that is perfect because I'm still going to need a little bit of money. Mm-hmm. And so I worked all throughout college, which was super hard and like felt lame at times because everybody's like, hey, man, we're going to go hang out. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to work. But at the end of the day, it actually worked out super well.
Yeah.
So when I graduated, I'd already kind of been dropping a bug in the ear about wanting to like work full time because, obviously after college, you got to get a job. So, and they were like, yeah, sure. So they offered me a full-time role and super fortunate. And it's been just a phenomenal experience ever since. So very, very thankful for that.
So you said you've been working there for 17 years.
Oh, for 14 years.
14
I
years.
started when I was 17.
Okay.
Or actually 16, about to turn 17.
Okay. And how old are you now?
31.
31.
Dude.
And you've got, geez, just think about it. Now think about it. The average age of retirement is, 65 in the United States?
Yeah.
And if you stay at this one job, because I feel like in our talking and passing, I feel like this is something that you would stay in.
Yeah, for sure.
Just imagine how, you'll get those, like the big silver
Dude,
award.
they
Yeah,
better
man.
put a freaking plaque in
Listen,
there.
for sure. I need a parade,
a
bro.
statue.
Yeah, like come on, man.
Spartanburg, born, bred, raised, and stayed.
Hey,
You're going to be there, almost 50 years,
dude.
if you think about
Hey,
it.
man.
That's unheard of, man. It's crazy, especially our generation. There's so much turnover in job.
Yeah.
People are constantly changing
Well,
jobs.
I feel like I have an old soul, so it kind of fits. How
I definitely get that.
Yeah,
I
man.
definitely get that about you.
Yeah, I have an old soul for sure, so it works perfectly.
No, I think there's something to be said about working through college, too. Definitely, you get that work ethic early.
Absolutely.
And you learn to appreciate $1 pretty quickly, too.
Absolutely. Everybody should work in like a service industry at some point just because it teaches you some very valuable lessons you just can't get anywhere else.
100%.
Yes.
We've said that before on this
Yes.
podcast. We 100% agree. Did you play any sports over at Burns?
Man, I was a nerd, and that's the worst part about saying you went to Burns is everybody's like, oh, you play football?
You play football, yeah.
No, man, it wasn't in the cards for me, bro.
Yeah.
I was good at books, and when I finally accepted that, it was a lot less stressful. Just be who you are, and
Yeah.
and it, you know, it actually worked out super well when I gave up trying to live out someone else's dream.
Sure.
You know, and just say, hey, I'll probably get a lot further with math and science, believe it or not, than I will with like trying to pose and be like a football player.
Right.
Now, when you say someone else's dreams, which is like something that your parents wanted you to do?
Well, no, I think it's pretty common in today's world, you know, right? Like when you're young, all you see as far as success oftentimes revolves around some sort of like athlete.
Correct.
Whether it's, you know, the Kobe's or whomever is like, oh, well, I'm halfway decent at basketball. It goes in sometime.
Right.
Maybe I should be, you know, the next LeBron. And it's like, I mean, they already have a LeBron. You might be, or you might not. And there's no really wrong answer to that. It's just finding out what you're good at and just letting that sort of dictate the flow rather than trying to like swim upstream.
For
and it
sure.
just may not be for you.
Yeah. And Burns is a pretty big powerhouse.
Man,
for
Burns
football,
is a powerhouse.
so.
And it was almost like, you know, if you weren't on the football team, it was like, what are you doing with your life? Like,
All their sports are killing it right now, though. I've been following them, and their baseball team is crushing it. So is their softball team.
man,
right now.
Burns is a powerhouse just for like athletes, man, just pure athletes. So kudos to Burns High for sure.
Yeah. So how did you find fitness, and how did you find CrossFit?
Yeah, man. So super cool story. So like in college, dude, I ate terrible. Like I lived the college life, and it showed. You know, and I think towards the latter years, I started like wanting to get more just like active. So I just started running, honestly. And it wasn't until when I came aboard my job full time, my boss is like super cool, and he did CrossFit. And you know, it's one of those things where it's like, nah, I'm good. I don't want to do that. Like you don't really know what you're saying no to. You just, you know, it's like one of the popular things. So you try to be like too cool for school. And he finally convinced me to come try it out, and I died. It was like first workout, I was dead. But for some strange, I guess this is every CrossFitter, it's like, I kind of like it. Like this is terrible, but it's kind of awesome at the same time. And so that was like 2013.
Wow.
So I've been I should be much better at CrossFit for as long as I've been doing it.
I say that every day.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Forever.
I'm almost embarrassed to say I've been doing CrossFit for as long as I have.
No,
Do you remember the first workout? Do you remember what it was?
No, I think I probably blacked out. So
Nice.
It's crazy. Well, I think that thing that draws people in is they're like, all right, I just went to the gym and I feel like I actually accomplished something.
Right.
I mean,
sure.
how many times did we go to the gym before and we walked in and we hopped on the treadmill for a mile, did some bicep curls, and called it a day?
Yeah, or like, you know,
like-
you know, not a knock against like mainstream gyms, but like a lot of people just like stare at themselves.
Right.
And I love the fact that like there are no mirrors in a CrossFit gym except for maybe like the bathroom or something.
Right.
And you can't waste time. So rather than spending like 2 hours at some, you know, fitness center, if I go to like a CrossFit gym, 45 minutes maybe, and like I know I just got a solid workout in.
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool, man.
I shot one of the open workouts this year, and I won't name the place, Anderson YMCA. And in their CrossFit gym, they got a window, and it faces out to the big broski room where all the weights in are. And these guys are just like standing there looking, and they're watching everybody doing these like kipping pull-ups and, you know, lifting weights and stuff. And while they're going, they're still standing at the window. And I started making fun of them on the other side. I'm like, you guys, you know, they don't really, like you said, they don't know what they're seeing,
Right.
and they don't understand.
Right.
So there's not a knock on them. You're exactly right.
Yeah, for sure.
It's you go in there and you throw your hardest at it, and then sometimes you feel like you've done your best and you go home.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know. So how did you come up with Rick Jones Films? Let's just jump into it.
So, you know, I think to be honest with you, Rick Jones Films came up sort of late, and that's still like something that's kind of in the works, actually, you know, as far as like unveiling that. So it's super cool that I get to share that with you guys. But for the longest time, it was just more of just a creative passion for video and not necessarily something that was established, more or less. And for me, I'm the type of person when it comes to like artistic stuff, like I just dive in. And so rather than, you know, maybe like dabbling in it, I'll find myself like just consumed in learning. And I guess that's that Burns High School nerd, you know, coming out full force. So, you know, just been like countless hours on YouTube. So really it was just a desire of wanting to produce something at a very high quality that just like, that's more or less where my competitive edge comes in.
Right.
And so, you know, it was one of those things that I spend a lot of time just practicing. And when I would just put out stuff, people actually liked it, which was kind of mind blowing in and of itself, right? You know, for people to actually, you know, like what you're doing. And so it just kind of evolved. And so eventually, you know, especially when I started getting like real gear, that was when it was like, all right, like probably want to, you know, take the next step and take that leap into like formalizing it, which was super cool, you know, not something that I ever intended for it to become, but it's really awesome to see it grow from where it has to like, you know, it's actually an established thing now. So it's very, very humbling.
What was the spark for you? I mean, did you see that there was something missing as far as like, I mean,
And were you videoing, was CrossFit the first thing that you really wanted to video, or was there like other types of videos that you were trying to make and CrossFit just kind of landed in your lap because you were CrossFitting?
For sure. I think CrossFit was just like low hanging fruit from the standpoint of like, I'm there all the time. But I think as far as like creative desires, like I love videoing a lot of like city stuff. And, you know, for me, like when I think of some of my video goals is to do more of like short films. So I think originally it was more along the lines of like, I really like short films. Like how could I do like a documentary style, this or that?
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And I think those are super cool. Just like storytelling.
Yeah.
Storytelling is so awesome for me. And CrossFit just kind of happened to be, you know, take the driver's seat in a lot of the videos because that was, you know, people wanted to see more videos or more of themselves, if, you know, we're being honest.
Absolutely.
Yeah, who doesn't
doesn't?
want to see yourself in
Yeah.
a video?
It's just so interesting because you went to Wofford for econ and then you end up getting this passion for videography.
For sure. And the strange thing is like video was not like, I was more of an R&B singer, to be honest with you. I was more heavily music based. But those two worlds, as different as they are, they definitely have their overlap. So, you know, it's super cool when I think of like films and stuff, being able to, you know, eventually I want to like score a short film. And those are things that maybe the college years and then after have helped sort of build those extra tools, you know. So whenever, you know, I do get ready to venture out into maybe a little bit more produced films, just having the flexibility to kind of do a little bit of everything is something that makes me excited.
I think
awesome.
that's huge. I mean, I know from my standpoint, the few videos that I've done, the score and the Foley aspect of it,
Yeah.
and getting it to sound right,
Yeah,
is huge.
absolutely.
And a lot of people don't realize you can put a video out of somebody doing CrossFit, right? And you can see them moving, and you know what you pick up on your camera on your boom mic is a lot of times not what the final sound's going to be.
Absolutely.
You know, because you've got to somehow make it sound more impactful.
For sure.
You know, so you've got to add that noise in the background.
Right.
You've got to add a little bit of music to it.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and you've got to, you know, when something hits the ground, you got to make sure that you hear that sound. I mean,
Absolutely.
a lot of
And-
people don't get that.
And that sound design, you know, it's one of those things, and you'll understand this for sure, is like you don't know you're hearing it.
Exactly.
But if it wasn't there, you would know it's not. You may not be able to put a name to it. And I think that's, you know, the art behind, you know, the visual and the sound aspects of it is there's a lot that goes into that you probably wouldn't even be able to really point out or isolate it. It's just like a combination of several things done very well, you know, when you're looking at these videos that you may really like that you don't even know what you're even looking at or even hearing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I grew up, a lot of people probably don't know this, I grew up playing the violin, and I played in lots and lots of orchestras growing up. And it's kind of the same thing with the orchestra. There's so many different instruments. When you're sitting there in the audience, you don't know what you're hearing, but you know if that French horn isn't there,
Right.
like it just doesn't sound the same.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I think the perfect example for people at home listening is when I went and shot the basketball tournaments. We had piped in fan sounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was very unnerving because they're trying to make it sound natural. And
Right.
it's not the same.
Yeah,
It's just
for
not the
sure.
same.
I mean, there's just so many aspects of sound. You know, you have like reverb, you have the acoustics of the room, and it's like all these things that just naturally happen. And so when you're trying to recreate anything, you always are finding yourself battling. I mean, even with just shooting, everybody's trying to recreate film or recreate what they're seeing with their eyes. And, with technology, it's a great resource, but it's still, at the end of the day, a piece of equipment that you're trying to make seem as realistic as possible.
Right.
So there's just an art in, just an art to it.
Yeah.
So talk about, you said equipment, and you just bought some new equipment. Talk about the equipment you were using when you first started out.
So, out of everything, I think that is the coolest part of my journey, per se, as far as the video, because actually starting out, when I was doing most of the videos that people have seen leading up to now, I shot everything on an iPhone, which I think was like, caught people off guard. And I thought it was the best part about it. But I think for me, it was the lack of gear that helped me focus on some of the intangibles, like just learning how I like to shoot, spending more time researching, and not necessarily being, if I was given a camera 5 years ago, I would have been overwhelmed just with all the features and buttons, to the point of where it probably would have like stunted my growth, versus saying, hey, here are some bare bones tools and figure it out. YouTube stuff. Yeah. So at the time, like, I knew everybody was using like MacBooks, and like, this is the audio visual way of going. And I'm like, man, like, MacBooks are kind of expensive.
Right.
So I was like, ugh. But I like found this used MacBook off like Amazon for like $500, and like upgraded the RAM and stuff, like just to try to make it a little bit faster. So I was using that, and so it was like this very incremental change in like upgrading. So it was never like this huge upgrade. And I was like, get the new iPhone whenever it comes out, because it's probably got a better camera. And so that was pretty much it. And other than that, it was just like learning, looking at different things that I like, as far as like great filmmakers or great videos, and trying to replicate or be inspired by what they're doing to try to use what I had to make a good video. So recently I was able to get like an actual camera, which is super awesome. But it's just like such a deeper level of appreciation. And there's just so many things that like I've already learned. So with the massive jump in quality that I get with the equipment, it pairs very nicely that I've been to the best that I can, trying to build up, my stylistic way of shooting to where it pairs easier out the gate with a real camera, versus like having to learn so many other things from scratch.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. I think what you just said epitomizes. We live in a society where we want instant gratification, right?
Sure,
we want the best of everything right away. I think you can equate that to CrossFit, right?
Right.
As soon as we walk in, we want to be able to do muscle ups. We want to be doing butterfly pull-ups.
Handstand
walks. You've got to start from the beginning. And when you start from the beginning and hone in on those beginner skills and work your way to those more advanced skills, not only are you going to save yourself a lot of misery from injury, but also you'll appreciate once you do appropriately get those butterfly pull-ups.
For sure.
Or those muscle ups, similar to how, this whole camera situation.
Absolutely.
I think that's so cool.
Absolutely.
Same thing with any situation in life. Like, some people, they're like, oh, I graduated college, I'm starting at the bottom rung of this job. But you got to start somewhere to work your way up. If you just were thrown into that, ocean of, being a CEO, you would be lost right away.
You probably would ruin it. You know? And so I think that was the best thing that could happen for me, was to be limited. And I mean, the iPhone has a great camera, don't get me wrong, but like there's just certain things you're just not going to be able to do on a phone.
True.
With any camera, you have a lot more resource just in your hand to do a lot more cool things. And if you don't know what white balance is, or you don't know the basic fundamentals, then like you probably don't need to worry about getting, $1,000 camera or whatever the case may be. Yeah, exactly. Like, just get good, kind of get that rawness of just like, hey, I'm just shooting, I'm learning, kind of refining how I like to do things, learning some of the fundamentals. That way, when you do get something, you're not so overwhelmed that you just give up.
I feel like you've said something similar to this when talking about your cameras when you first started.
It's just,
I think you talked about this in your podcast episode too.
When you start out, it's always very scary because it's your child. It's what your dream is. And so, when I went to school for it, it was basically, the teacher always told us, said, look, you either have an eye for it or you don't have an eye for it.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what your equipment is.
Right.
As long as you can put out and people can see it, then they're going to believe you. And it just, Rick hasn't, and I can say this, I remember when Rick came out on the scene, and Rick has always had an eye for it. And he's quick. And I tell him every day, every time I see him, I say, I hate editing. Because I'm the type of, when I would do my films or when I would do a video, I would get so ingrained in the minutia of the editing part that it would drive me crazy. And so it's just one of those things where it's come a long way because now you have plugins and stuff.
Right.
But it's just, you know, it is about the equipment to some extent. But then, you know, like he was saying, I can attest to that when he was talking about how I'm glad I started on an iPhone, because a lot of times when you are starting out, you know, it's best to hone your skill.
Yeah.
My biggest thing is develop your style first.
Yes.
You know, once you have developed your style, you can go back, like you said, and upgrade it and then meet your style to it.
Absolutely.
Again.
100%.
And it's going to be so much better. And I think a lot of creatives starting out, they kind of sort of quit too soon before they get started.
Yep.
Right.
So Rick Jones became an actual business at what point?
So Rick Jones actually became an actual business this year.
This year.
And so I think that kind of, you know, touches on the aspect that is hard for, you know, just people in general or creators, is that when you come out, you make something that people like, you immediately want to like, okay, I want to start charging for this.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, like, you know, the business aspect was something that, you know, was last more so because for me, you know, it wasn't something I was doing full time. So I had the luxury of just trying stuff or just shooting for fun. And so that was, you know, believe it or not, like the biggest thing that I was doing, like I would just shoot stuff just for practice. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if I shot something that somebody liked, yeah, sure, go ahead and put it out. I don't really care. But after a while where like you have people or even companies that say, hey, like we would love for you to do something, it's like, all right, I probably need to formalize this so I can then, you know, charge and do stuff like that to the degree that I would want to, you know, especially for the, you know, the investments that have been put into it on my end. So, you know, that's something that this year, especially after the new camera upgrade, I started getting a lot of inquiries about, you know, videos and stuff. So it was kind of the turning point for me to say, well, all right, well, like if we're going to bring this level of quality, then it's going to have to come with, you know, obviously a much higher cost.
Absolutely.
So, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, all right, I'm going to, you know, get in the process of getting my logo and doing all the trademarking and stuff like that, which is, thankfully I have a friend who's like super awesome at this stuff, because I would, you know, be super lost.
Right.
But that's something that has formalized this year. So I'm really stoked about it.
How did you feel when you because I know exactly where you're coming from when you're talking about putting prices out there.
Yeah.
Dude, that's the scariest. For me, that's still is the scariest thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, because we have put so much into our equipment, into the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, all they ever see is when you're working.
Right.
When you're working in front of them and pressing that camera button and going around. That's all they ever see. And they think that's it.
Right.
But there's so much behind it that they don't see.
Well, and that was one of the, you know, when I say luxuries of doing this as a hobby, is that, you know, I kind of had the luxury of pushing that off for a little bit and not really worrying about it. But like, I definitely felt for the guys and gals who like, this is what they do full time. So that may be something that, you know, the formalities have to get done a lot quicker because this is paying bills. So I totally understand that. And in this effort to, you know, create my own business with it, that is something that is difficult, because you're right. Like you put a lot of time and effort into being able to do the things you do, regardless if it takes you 5 minutes or an hour to do it. And I've heard it put best. A friend of mine once told me, he said, even if you can put out a video in an hour, they're not paying you for the fact that you can do it in an hour. They're paying you for the 10 years that it took you to learn how to do it in an hour.
Exactly.
And that, I think, from a creator standpoint, that's probably one of the hardest things to get the general non-creative public to understand. Because it's like, oh, well, you just da-da-da-da and threw it together and it looks awesome. It's like, yeah, that and that's why people spend countless hours studying or you know, going to school or YouTubing or, you know, putting out stuff that sucks, because they're working to get better to where they can do it. in a more efficient manner.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. So is it safe to say that when you started doing these crash videos,
Yeah.
that was kind of the turning point for you as far as people reaching out to you?
Yeah, it was some. So the heart behind the crash videos was obviously where I work out, and so I love my crash community. And with putting out videos, I think it was something that more than anything else, it was just seeing people enjoy seeing themselves in a positive light. And I think when it comes to videos and just like self-image, as something that a lot of people struggle with, and everybody has a season of life where you do. And so just seeing how proud people were to like even be in the video for a split second was just like, it's awesome because I'm getting to like hone in my craft because I'm going to shoot anyways just to practice. But somebody is showing their friends like, hey, like I do CrossFit at this gym and like, here's a video.
It's huge.
And it's just like this like sense of just like pride that I can tell that like, I'm happy to be able to share my gifts with people. And that's why for me, like it's never been about like making a business. It was just sharing my gifts.
Right.
And then it just got to a point to where it was like, okay, it's time to make it a business. But yeah, with Crash, it was just, that was kind of when people started to maybe pick up on that I was doing videos or they would see different things. And that's what started to kind of, get my name out there, even though I wasn't trying to do that. It's just kind of happened organically.
Yeah, it's funny. We have Jackson Drohan. He works for us. So he's one of our good friends and employees, and he's transferring over to Crash. And that was one of the things he said. He's like, get Rick to get me in some of those videos.
I've had people say like, man, I'm going to come to the gym just to make it in the video.
Yeah.
And that's super flattering, man. It's super awesome to hear people just to make something that people like and want to be a part of is just, super awesome. Yeah, super cool.
So far, what is your favorite memory related to videography?
Man, that is a tough question because there's a lot of them. I think by far the happiest moment would be driving up to Charlotte to pick up my Sony camera. And I think it was more just from the standpoint of like, man, I've been grinding on this iPhone for years and now I'm actually getting a legitimate camera. So that was just super special because, if anybody who's seen me filming, they've seen my little gimbal setup with my iPhone. And it was just really like a monumental moment for me to actually upgrade and have a legitimate camera.
That's awesome.
It's just running gunning. I mean, that's basically what you were doing and what
Yeah.
I do and what anybody really does.
Yeah.
Does it. But it is very liberating. It's also very daunting when you get that camera and you're like, now I gotta start over.
Yeah, like what does this button do?
It's like, wow. And if you touch it wrong, it's so easy to. I can walk across a competition floor with my cameras hanging, and when I go to put the camera back up, it won't be the same setting as when I was over there because it's either rubbed up against my leg, and so it's just kind of like you're constantly looking at it. But where's that with the iPhone? You're like,
yeah, boom, and you're just constantly learning because things in the scene change,
right?
And with the camera, it's a powerful tool, but it requires a little bit more of your involvement and know-how to say, okay, well, it just got dark in here. So I'm going to have to turn up my ISO or I'm going to have to do all these different things that like the iPhone was just like, hey, just touch the screen here and it's going to do everything for you.
All right. Hey guys, we're going to take a break to thank our sponsors for today's episode. We're going to start off with CrossFit Greer. If you're living in the Greer area and are interested in getting started in CrossFit, go ahead and look up CrossFit Greer. Jen and Reagan Green are the owners there. If you mention the Apogee podcast to them, they will give you 10% off your first month's membership fees.
I would also like to thank Blitz Belts and Chris Kane for their continued support of the show. So be sure to use their 15% off coupon code at checkout. That's Apogee, all caps. That gets you, the listener, 15% off at checkout at Blitz Belts on your custom order. I want to thank GoTape for being our new sponsor. GoTape has committed its brand to providing the best in athletic tape. They are the standard for CrossFit tape, scary sticky. Now they are providing the best in KT tape. So at checkout, be sure to get your 25% off your wholesale purchase. Use the coupon code Apogee at checkout.
Finally, if you guys would like to become an invested friend of the show and are interested in supporting the show directly, go to anchor.fm/Apogee Podcast and click on the support tab. We love bringing you guys awesome content each week. So be sure to subscribe to the podcast, drop a review, and let us know how we're doing. I've got a question. So how do you approach a project in reference to the look and feel of the finished product?
So that's a great question. And sometimes I don't. I figure it out on the back end, which is I think for me, like I'm always shooting stuff like random, like short films or videos in my mind. I'm just always editing something in my head. And, you know, I try to shoot a variety of shots to where it allows me to then take it to wherever direction I want to go. So, and I think it also goes back to the whole point of style, right? So I know for my particular video style, I like a lot of slow motion. So for me, with speed ramping, which is like going slow and then fast again, I know that I need to shoot a certain way for me to have that flexibility during the edit process. And so between that and then like song selection, I'll usually start to kind of get a vibe, because for me, the video and the sound aspect need to work together. And you want to have it so that they just organically fit together. And so that will sort of determine. And then like if I'm like working on a project or something, I kind of just try to translate whatever feel that, you know, we may be going for into the look of the film or the look of the project, or maybe how it opens up. If it's going to be something epic, I'll try to make song selection based around, you know, just the feel of going for it. So some of it depends on, you know, what video we're doing. But if I'm just like shooting something random, it just kind of comes together by and large around whatever song that I feel fits the vibe of whatever I'm shooting.
Amen. Let me ask you this question. You mentioned something. You said you're always shooting in your head.
Yeah.
You know? So at what age did you start doing that?
You know, I would say that is probably more recent.
Really?
Yeah. Now that I'm just doing video so much, because it used to be music. I was always writing something in my head or like recording something in my head. And then as I've took a break from music and focused more on video, it's changed over. So I would say for the past 2 years or so, 2 or 3 years, that's been primarily like my mind focus artistically is like shooting videos.
I remember when it started for me, because it's funny you were talking about cutting grass. I'm a child of the 80s, so I would listen to like New Kids on the Block, not New Kids on the Block, New Edition.
Yeah.
You know, the Commodores and stuff like that when Lionel Richie was going around. And so I would literally, while I'm cutting grass, I'm listening to Houdini and all them on the headphones, and I'm like, I think this would be really cool if they made because they had music videos back then, shockingly. But I'm like, I think this would be really cool if they did it like this or like that.
Right.
So I'm like, I get where I can understand completely when you say, oh, I'm shooting videos in my head.
Right.
I think you have to as a creative. I think if somebody, because it's the way you see it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's everybody's always trying to come up with a great little hashtag. It's like, see how I see or whatever. Ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what you're doing.
Yeah, for
you're
sure.
presenting and saying, hey, this is how I see it.
Right.
This
absolutely.
is, eyes of the world. This is what I see.
For sure.
And I want to invite you in to see it.
Absolutely.
And
For most people that ask you to do a project, do they kind of say, I'm giving you the reins, I want you to create this on you're the creative mind, go with it? Or do a lot of people like to give their input and say, hey, this is kind of the vibe I'm looking for, can you attack it that way?
Most of the time, it's been very bare bones framework, which I take as a compliment, because that's always an element of trust to say, hey, we want you to shoot this, but run with it, you know. So that makes me feel good about as far as like my style and what they like that I do and want to have that done for them. So sometimes they'll, you know, people may say, hey, I'm kind of going for this feel, but rarely, if I don't think ever at all, have I, you know, worked with anybody who's been like super meticulous to the fact of like, I want it like this, because I think also too, it comes down to say, well, hey, you know, you might be better off shooting it yourself. If you're
too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, you know, at the end of the day, if you ask somebody to shoot a photo or a video for you, there's a large aspect of it where you're asking them as the creative to do it. Right. You know what I'm saying? So like anybody can get a camera, and that's not why you're asking them most of the time. It's because of how they shoot. And so I think it's good that people, whether unintentionally or not, are just like, hey man, like do your thing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it's probably going to be better if it happens organically versus like trying to maybe like push something that on the back end may not have been a good idea.
Right.
And you don't want to, put yourself in this box and then miss out on something that could have been really awesome because you had your mind dead set on looking X amount of ways or whatever.
Right. I love that. That's such a great answer. What do you think are your unique individual skills that have really helped you be successful in this so far, or get to the point where you're at?
That's something hard to talk about because I don't like feeling like I'm bragging on myself because I feel like I still have so much to learn. But I think the thing that I feel like people will at least compliment me on is just like framing of shots. And then maybe like stylistic as far as like capturing emotion and then translating it to video, which is not something that like I necessarily think about doing. I think it just happens because I don't know that I'm thinking about doing
Right,
that, to be
yeah.
honest with you. So I think those are, for me, the things that I think separate me or make my videos feel unique for me, is trying to capture that moment to make people feel for this minute or two that they're actually there.
Sure, absolutely.
So tell me something as
Yeah.
a creative. What is your favorite movie? Well, actually, let me ask you this. What is one of the movies that influences your style?
This is a toughie. Honestly, I think my style is heavily influenced by music.
Okay.
And I think I like a lot of like trap style music.
Mm-hmm.
So like heavy snares, sub basses, like all those like very like dirty sort of like instruments. And so a lot of the videos that I use, like I'm using trap music to influence. And so I based my cuts and different speed ramps and stuff around the music. And so that then sort of like marries the two together. As far as like videos and actual films, I think there's some things that are like influencing some of the direction that like I want to go, which is like I love the Avengers, and I think they have some of the best colors that I've really ever seen as far as like movies, and they're just so well done. And I love like the special effects, and those are things that like I want to learn eventually.
Right.
So those are very like inspiring. But then again, I like some of the older style films. It's hard to pick out one particular movie because at that point of Hollywood, you got a lot of really good people shooting stuff. So for what I'm looking at, it's done well across the board, generally speaking. But more than actual movies, I would say the music influences my style.
If you could go back in time and go back to college, do you think that you would do any sort of classes in media or videoing, or even do a minor, or are you super happy that you didn't do that and you did all of this learning via yourself on YouTube?
Yeah, and I think with Wofford, those options are very limited. So I'm super thankful for my time at Wofford, so I wouldn't change it in that regard. But I'm happy that I went the route that I did, and because I look at what I do now and I'm proud of it, and I think changing something that big in the journey would probably bring me to a different outcome. Not to say it will be bad, but I'm content with how I've been able to sort of just learn on the fly or just grind it out. So I wouldn't want to trade in the grind.
I agree 100%. Whenever I'm learning something new, that's how I feel too. It's like, this is so cool that I'm doing this on my own.
Yeah,
I'm
for
not
sure.
paying somebody to teach me this. I'm doing it because I love it.
Well, you talk about going to school. You're exactly right. It's when I went, we didn't have half the stuff we have now.
Right.
We didn't have color grading. We didn't have.
How old are you?
I'm
Oh, okay.
47.
Just kidding.
But we didn't even. I was still learning on film.
Right.
So I mean,
Which is like a lost art.
right. And I still do film, and I love film, but it's so funny now because I see like your before and after when you're doing the color grading.
Yeah.
And people are like, "What does that mean?" And I'm like, That's a whole new thing that's come out like in the past 15 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
Color grading, because you used to didn't have that. That was you would just have a piece of film strip, and that was the color that was given on the film.
Right.
And now it's like you can go in and you could shoot the whole thing flat. I know I'm over everybody's head at this point, but I'm like,
I know what you mean.
but it lets you go back and stylistically
Yeah.
color it how you want to see
Yeah.
it.
So, basically what we're talking about right now is, when people are shooting videos or they have this idea of what they want it to look like, a lot of that feel is created by the colors, and like The Matrix is something that comes to mind. It has this very like green tint to it. And those are things that you wouldn't be able to do back in the day. It is what it is. And you're just going to have to roll with that. But now you have the flexibility of shooting what they call flat or log, not to nerd out too much. But what that does is it's almost like a grayed out picture. And so when you get into like your edit, you can then add whatever colors you see fit for
That's
it.
why George Lucas has done how many versions of Star Wars? He just keeps going back to the same old thing.
Yeah.
Because he wants to be able to grade it.
Yeah.
If you go back and you look at the original Star Wars, it looks gray. It's very washed out.
That's crazy. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
That's cool. Talk a little bit about your music background. I mean, this is such a huge influence in what you're doing right now.
Absolutely.
So talk about that.
So music was something that kind of came about freshman year at Wofford. And a friend of a friend had a recording studio at his house. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And for whatever reason, I was like, man, this dude's like P. Diddy or something. Like, this is awesome. Like, we got all like, me and my roommate got like all dressed up to go to this dude's house. This is super funny, embarrassing story, but it was awesome. And, just sort of, I don't know, like being open to the idea that like, hey, I can make music. Like, I know that sounds dumb, but when you see things or hear things done well, a lot of times you can never think that you have access to create that stuff. And so we were just messing around, and he's like, hey man, just here's a beat that I have, go up to the mic and we'll like throw some heavy auto-tune on you because it's the first time. And I was like, yes, and fell in love with it, man. I was like, this is so legit. And so
you were singing.
Yeah, I was singing, doing the whole R&B thing because I just love R&B music. And so from then on, became more of like, man, I want to do this as often as possible. So then it, kind of started that whole process of learning and YouTubing. Because again, I'm at Wofford, I'm not at Full Sail or somewhere. So it's like, if I want to do this, it's going to be a lot of like self-learning. So over the years, I like saved up money, bought a mixing board, bought a microphone, and learned how to produce music. And so before I had all the equipment to like record, it was like, let me download the demo version of Fruity Loops, which is like beat making software, and just learn how to make beats. And so after a while, I finally got the equipment, YouTubed enough videos to decently mix a song, and just kind of kept refining it to where like, again, just felt very humble that people liked what I was putting out. And so that became like what I was known for versus like sports. It was music, or being the guy who like puts out R&B songs. And so that was something that has been like a big part of my life, and it's probably jealous because videos have kind of taken over for the past couple of years. But so R&B music has been like definitely like my first creative love for sure.
So you're writing your own songs and your own lyrics and everything.
Yeah.
We put stuff out on SoundCloud and stuff.
Putting stuff out on SoundCloud. I put 2 projects out on iTunes and Spotify. So that was super cool. Mixed all those in my bedroom. So gives it that like, I don't know, everybody's like, oh man, I recorded this in my bedroom, and like it sounds super cool. But it is awesome because again, like that's something that 30 years ago was unheard of, like recording something in your bedroom that was radio quality or close to it. Like you had to have a massive studio and a producer and an engineer and all these different things. And now you can get a MIDI keyboard and program a beat and then record it on a microphone. And next thing you know, you could potentially blow up just from like recording stuff in your bedroom, which is nuts to think about.
It's crazy to me how the internet has democratized media and entertainment so quickly and so fast.
Absolutely.
And it's also amazing to see how much this year of COVID has done to media so fast, because it's and I feel bad for Hollywood to an extent, because it's shown that when left to our own devices, we'll make our own entertainment.
Absolutely. And I think if I'm Hollywood and I'm doing a lot of assuming right now, the last thing I want is for regular consumers to be able to get their hands on like top level production equipment at a very low cost. You can get a Blackmagic camera for $1,000 and it looks phenomenal. So it's just much more in reach to make something that was almost, left to just like only these people over here. You can buy a microphone these days. You can have a full setup. So, you don't need, a lot of the same, big companies that you used to in order to do something. So you're absolutely right. Like there's just so much more flexibility to be creative and do stuff at a high level.
Didn't Red just come out with a $2,000 production camera?
So I know they came out with the Komodo, which is right around $5,000.
Okay.
I haven't heard of one at $2,000, but it wouldn't surprise me because they're even tailoring, their products to, just now. Granted, $2,000 is still a lot of money.
It's a lot of money,
but
yeah.
it's in regard of Red cameras. I mean, you're talking cameras that could get to $50,000.
Right.
$2,000 is a lot more feasible.
Mm-hmm.
So to have that sort of brand and power behind you at a much more, feasible price point, it's just unheard of.
To give you guys a reference, a production camera that you see on a TV show or like that, that's anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000.
Easy.
And then if you watched the Super Bowl this year, they did something very different. They went and shot it all on Sony's. So when you would see stuff that was out of focus, like in the touchdown celebrations and stuff, it wasn't because the cameraman didn't know what he was doing. It was that the camera was new to him.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to get up close and everything, and it's changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I talked to my professor at Tri-County Tech about it, and he's like, yeah, he goes, when you were here, we had the cameras. He goes, now everybody just wants to build their own camera rig.
Yeah.
And he's like, I hate that. And I'm like, I understand it.
Yeah.
I said, but that's the way it's going to be. I mean, because, it's ingenuity. You can, like you said, like what you did, you took your Apple iPhone, you put a Rode microphone on there, and you had a gimbal on it.
Yeah.
And I've seen so many videos that would compare the Apple iPhone to a Red camera.
Right.
So, I mean, it's the quality, the democratization, the leveling of the field is there.
Yes.
Anybody can do it.
Absolutely.
So like I harp all the time, it's just basically your style.
That's it. That's it.
And there's always going to be somebody there that's going to like your style.
For sure. For sure.
So you're a member of the worship team at New Spring, correct?
That is correct.
Talk about that, man. How long have you been doing that?
So I first became a part of New Spring Worship 2014. I believe it was 2014. Man, these years are adding up pretty quickly, man.
Right,
I tell you
because we're in
what.
2021.
Yeah,
7 years, man.
For sure. And that was something, like I was just volunteering with like the youth ministry.
Uh-huh.
And again, had no intentions of like, hey guys, I sing. Hey guys,
Right.
or anything like that. It was just really cool to hang out with, youth. And that's always been something that I've been, passionate about doing, is volunteering with like high school age students. And so kind of through that, like some people like stumbled across some music of mine. I was like, hey man, you should sing at our Christmas program. And I'm like, okay, like, sure. And fell in love with it, man. And it was just an opportunity to like, just be a part of something much bigger than myself.
Right.
And I think the best thing about it is that like I'm not up there for me. There's a gazillion phenomenal singers that will be well and way more qualified than me to be up there, but it's just taking advantage of being able to share the gifts you have, because every day is we're not promised it, so why not use it to put some positive energy in the world.
So this was like with Lee McDermott and all them, correct?
Yeah, so like, man, Lee was like a mythical creature, man. I hadn't met Lee at the time. I just saw him on TV. I was like, man, he's the man. Because I started at Spartanburg campus. So love the Spartanburg campus. Always have a special place in my heart for sure. But a lot of the guys and gals that I had watched online, shame on me, but I kind of had like idolized them because, man, these guys are legit. These are really great, singers and worship leaders. And, kind of maturing, you know, in my own, you know, personal life is like, man, these are just normal people, you know, and it's just learning not to necessarily elevate people in ways that you should. And that doesn't take anything away from them, but, you know, just realizing that at the end of the day, we're all here to do the same thing. And it's not about any one person. And I think that's been the most awesome thing about being a part of the team.
That's great.
I remember one time you had posted on Instagram, you were over at the one in Anderson.
Yeah.
Because I was sitting in the backyard and I saw the feed and then I heard him start up and I'm like, because my house is like, it's like 5-minute walk to New Spring and Anderson, the campus. So we can always hear them when they're practicing. And I was like, oh, are you over there? He's like, yeah, man, I am. I was like, cool.
Yep.
Little known fact, Dan Stahl has played bass before at New Spring, I think.
Hey, come
didn't
on.
know
I didn't
that.
know he played the bass.
He does.
That's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about social media and business.
Yeah.
So many people find social media overwhelming and complicated when it comes to business. What do you say to folks who are trying to build a social media platform for themselves but are finding it a little hard to do so?
Yeah, I think that's something that's like ever evolving, you know, and now myself transitioning into, you know, more of a business aspect, there's certain things myself to learn. And I think, unfortunately, social media has gotten to the point to where now it's not just, hey, making a great content piece and putting it up. It's like, oh, now there's like certain times of the day that's better than others, or like there's all these metrics and things that go into it. And so I think the thing for me that whenever I'm doing something to put on social media is just to keep in mind that like short, simple, and sweet. Just keep it simple, because unfortunately the attention spans of people is so like small and short these days that you could make a great 5-minute content piece and they may not get past the first minute of it. So don't maybe spin your wheels or get frustrated because of that. Take advantage of it. So make something short to where, if anything, they feel like there's more that they want to see versus they've seen it so much that they have the full picture of everything now. And it is difficult, right? Because everybody has a mirrorless camera these days.
Yes.
So I saw a funny meme about, you know, YouTubers having like a full cinema camera and a full production, and that's kind of what you're going against is, you know, just about everybody's doing stuff at a very high content level. So I think the biggest thing is just to not get overwhelmed and use whatever strengths that you have. If you're a funny person, be funny. You know, if whatever your style is, stay true to that. And I think that is the biggest thing. Don't feel like you need to conform. Now, obviously, you have to adapt to the way that things are done, but you don't want to lose sight of what you stand for in an effort to win people over, because at the end of the day, even if you do that, you sold them something that's not actually legitimate.
Wow. That was a very wise answer.
That's amazing.
I really like that. What are your long-term goals? Where do you see this going in the future? Expansion, like in different cities, states.
Man, so
what do you want to do?
That would be phenomenal. You know, I haven't put any expectations on it. I think for me, the fact that, you know, even going as far as making it into a business is something that I never would have anticipated. So anything from here on out is just a bonus. So actually, I think as far as like personal goals, I want to do some short films with some visual effects. So like create characters, whether it be like my own superhero, and just come up with like a full treatment of like the person, their you know, behaviors, their superpowers, all those different things. Because I think I love superheroes. I was a huge Spider-Man fan growing up, like the best superhero character there is. And so just like realizing that like, hey, I could put something together. I have a camera. Like there's software everywhere. A lot of it's free.
Yep.
It's just dependent upon how much effort you want to put into it. And so for me, that's the type of playing field that I love, is an equal one, that the only separation is just you just being diligent and not giving up. So as far as long-term goals with CrossFit, it would be super cool to, I always joke around, and I tag the Buttery Bros and everything.
You got to.
Yeah, man. Because I watch a lot of their stuff. But my competitive nature is to say, okay, like I'm from small town Spartanburg, but I'm going to put out something that's like same level, and one of these days better than what you're doing now. and you're like working out with, Tia and all these super high level athletes. And I think for me that it's awesome to say, well, I want to do that, but I'm going to do it with an athlete that like maybe nobody's ever heard of.
Right.
And I'm going to make
That's
them look
amazing.
just as cool as you do with Tia. And it's going to be the same quality.
I love that.
Yeah. It's
I
like,
think that is so cool.
It's like they didn't do anything to me, but it's like a revenge sort of thing.
Right.
No, they didn't
I
do
get
anything
that.
to deserve this.
They
but,
just drive you. I mean, when I asked you who you look to or what kind of that's your answer.
Yeah,
It's Buddy
yeah,
Bros. You
yeah.
looked at them and you're like, okay, so what is the next thing? What is the next thing?
Yeah, and like they've done a phenomenal job. Like, and I think they've worked behind the scenes so much just with the CrossFit documentaries that like, I couldn't wait till those things drop just to watch them. And so I think here in recent years, you've been able to peer into like their personalities and who they are, which is great.
I've met Herb. Herb's a good dude.
Yeah, and they seem solid for sure. But for me, it also kind of drives me to say, well, like, okay, I can put out something. I can put out a documentary, and I'm gonna make it just as awesome.
That's great.
Yeah,
I think it's awesome.
I think it is. I believe you will do it.
thank you.
You're
Thanks.
keeping up in that fitness realm too. I'm telling you, Heber and Mars, man, they have been putting on some weight lately.
Yeah,
dude.
man.
God, they're getting stacked.
Hey, for sure.
No, you got to look the part.
Absolutely.
So, how is success in this new business venture correlated with your relationship with your friends and your family, and even, like I just said, your own fitness level?
Man, I think one of the things that's been super cool is having my core friends who've been around for the entire journey, and some of my best friends are like giving me like video ideas. And I think for me, as simple as that may sound, like, with like dudes, man, it's hard to get any sort of like emotion. I don't know why guys are like that, man. Everybody's just too cool to like be vulnerable or whatever. And so for some of my friends to be like, hey man, like I was thinking about your videos and this would be like, you ought to look into this because I think you'd be really good at it. It just, as insignificant as that may sound, for me is like really, really meaningful because to get to the point where like your closest friends like actually believe in what you're doing and they've seen the progression, it just feels awesome to know that like they're not just saying, hey, this looks good because they don't want to hurt my feelings. They're now spending some of their time in their own lives thinking of ways that they can, give me cool ideas. So it's just, it sounds weird, but it's really meaningful for me.
That's great. What does your mom think? She like it?
She loves it, man. she loves it. And one of the coolest things is seeing like my younger cousin. He just sent me a text the other day. He's like, hey man, let's get software for editing videos. And I'm just like, hey man, whichever one you're actually gonna use. Like,
right.
That's the best software, the one you're gonna use.
You're gonna make it a family affair.
Yeah, and then he sent me a video, man, of just like being in downtown Greenville. And it was just like such a special moment to know that like I've influenced and like brought about something creatively in him. Now I'm obviously not taking credit for it, but it's just super cool to see it.
You sparked him.
Yeah, spark the imagination
That's
and
great.
the creativity. And like so man, it's just super cool.
That's
super
awesome,
cool.
man.
It's amazing when you can do that.
Yeah.
Because it's like I've always said about CrossFit, like when you have kids watching, there's always somebody watching you,
For sure.
and it's they want to take up the mantle and they want to do the same thing, and it's really cool that like you said, your cousin calls you on the phone or whatever and says, hey, what do I need to
Yeah,
get?
man, that's super legit.
So
That's great.
and I'm pretty sure you get this too. Well, what if you're gonna start doing this? If I was gonna do this tomorrow, what camera should I buy? And
Right. The one
it's
that's
always-
in your
the
your
one
pocket.
that's in your hand. Yeah,
That's
it's
cool.
always the one that's in your hand.
All right, you ready for some rapid fire questions?
Yes.
Oh.
Dude, I like this shooting from the hip. Let's just keep doing that.
Let's do it. You go first though this time.
All right, man. Cake or pie?
Pie.
Any
Easy.
camera in the world, what would it be?
Oh gosh. Alexa. Ari Alexa.
All right, Alexa.
All right, so who are you hanging out with, Heber or Mars?
Oh gosh, Mars.
Yeah.
Do you like the gimbal or do you not like the gimbal?
Handheld.
Handheld.
Yeah.
Nice.
Let's go handheld.
All right. Would you rather go? So I see you're more of like a board type person. I see you do some skateboarding, right? Did I see that on your
Poser. Full poser.
full poser? All right. Well, same question. Are we surfing on the West Coast, or are we snowboarding in Colorado?
Snowboarding,
Awesome.
for sure.
I'd be down with that too.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, man. So what are you listening to right now in your car when you get back out there? What's playing?
Oh man, that's tough. A little bit of everything. That's a hard that's a hard question to answer.
Like when you turn it on, what's gonna be
Man,
blaring out the speakers?
Most likely Drake.
Okay, all right.
I'm sorry. I know.
All right.
I wish I had a better answer, but it's gonna be Drake.
That's fine. Everybody's got their go-tos.
Yeah.
What's it gonna be for you?
What's it gonna be for me? Probably the new Greta Van Fleet.
I'm in the middle of the newest Talking Elite Fitness podcast. All right, what's your favorite CrossFit movement? Or if you had to create your ideal 5-minute workout, what would it be?
It would be a combination of snatch, toes to bar, and ring muscle ups.
My kind of guy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it would suck, but it'd be awesome.
No, that's a fun workout.
So what is your editing software?
Final Cut Pro.
Nice.
You're hitting them up with all the nerd questions.
Hey, keep them coming. Keep them coming.
If you could work out with any games athlete, not local, so not Josh, and then you have to get coffee with them afterwards, who would it be?
Brent Fikowski.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
Because I think what I like about him is that he is unapologetically him.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you see is what you get.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Cool.
What's your preferred frame rate?
120.
Nobody knows what that means.
It doesn't matter.
Right. Shoot everything 120.
All right, Harrison's got a prepaid black card for you, and you can pick whoever you'd like, and you're going to GSP, and you're flying for a week vacation. Where are you going?
Milan, Italy.
Cool. Well, you've been there, right?
I know. I have to go back.
Okay. Very cool.
So if you could tell yourself, your 12-year-old self,
Yeah.
one piece of advice, what would it be?
Be you earlier.
Perfect. I think we should end with that one.
Where can they find you on social media at?
Find me at Rick Jones with an 1 instead of an I, because that one was taken, unfortunately, or at Rick Jones Films.
Nice.
Awesome.
Well, thank you very much, Rick. We
Thank
really
you guys
appreciate
for
it
having me,
man.
for sure.
Yeah, man,
Thank you.
this was really fun. I love doing these entrepreneurial podcasts because they inspire me, I know, and I think we get a lot of feedback from a lot of the listeners
That's
saying
awesome.
that they just love hearing these startup stories, man. And I think I can speak for the whole Upstate CrossFit community. Like, we're so happy to see what you're doing, and you got our full support.
Dude, thank you,
Definitely.
man. That means a lot.
Definitely.
Yeah,
It definitely
man.
means a lot.
All right, y'all heard it here.
Apogee Podcast.